So last but not least, we have Emeline Lafortune, another good friend and colleague of mine, who will be presenting on unsanctioned imports, the cost of removing marine plastic litter from small island states. Emeline is a project officer working with the Seychelles Islands Foundation and has taken the lead in the follow-up activities for the Aldabra Clean Up Project. She is passionate about sustainability and tackling marine plastic pollution. In her role, she hopes to build on the first Aldabra cleanup expedition in the following years. You have the floor, Emeline.
Hi everyone, my name is Emeline. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. As Jeremy's mentioned, I work at SIF. So just a bit about SIF. SIF is a non-profit charitable organization that manages and protects the two UNESCO World Heritage Sites of Seychelles. That includes the Aldabra Atoll and the Valley de Méon-Pralin. So today I'm here to talk to you about the threat and the burden of marine plastic litter to organizations such as SIF, and a little bit about the results of the Aldabra Clean Up Project. So diving into the global problem of marine plastic pollution, if we look at our graph, we can see that global plastics have increased from 1.7 million tons in 1954 to over 350 million in 2015. So approximately 8 million tons are entering the ocean annually and is largely as a result of the mismanaged waste. If we have a look at the map on the right, a study of the world's waste management shows that the Indian Ocean is fringed by countries with 100% mismanaged waste, as you can see with the dark blue color. Plastics are transported by by currents and winds throughout the world's oceans and usually have an endpoint of remote islands, which are usually biodiversity hotspots, such as the Seychelles. So as you all know, Seychelles is an archipelago of 115 islands stretching over 1.4 million kilometers square of the Western Indian Ocean. The largest island mass in Seychelles is actually the island of Aldabra Atoll, and it is in fact the second largest raised coral atoll in the world. So on the screen, you can see a little bit about the location of Aldabra and how, like the distance from the main island of Mahi in Seychelles. It's quite a distance. So before diving into the plastic problem, I think it's quite important to highlight that Aldebaran's outstanding universal value. So Aldabra is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Its perimeter is 211 kilometers, and of that, it's 10 kilometers of beach coastline. So to put into perspective, the main island of Seychelles, or Mahe, can fit in the lagoon of Aldabra. So Aldabra is also home to the largest seabed colonies in the Indian Ocean. It supports the largest population of giant tortoises worldwide and is the biggest breeding site for endangered green turtles in the southwest of the Indian Ocean. So as you can see in the photos, Aldebra's coastline have been accumulating large quantities of plastic pollution. And this is severely impacting the wildlife there. So tortoises are eating plastic, turtle beaches are getting clogged, offshore turtles are getting entangled in discarded ghost gear, as well as a lot of detrimental impacts on the land and seabeds. So I know everyone probably is asking, how did it get this bad, or why isn't it hasn't been cleaned up sooner? Well, the thing is that Aldabra is not like other islands, as it is extremely remote, which makes it logistically complex and highly costly, and it's also quite hostile. The raised limestone casts as impenetrable walls and submerged reef structures make it inaccessible via boats. So a lot of the areas of the atoll are not accessed very easily. However, areas close to the research station are kept clean by multiple annual cleanups. So with a staff team of around 12 people, it's not possible for more to be done, unfortunately. Therefore, it is a crucial factor to understand how much time and resources is needed for cleanups for effective planning and management of this plastic pollution threat. So the marine plastic litter issue is consequently a huge burden to organizations and government tasked with managing and conserving sites and different species. This is truly an unacceptable situation, to be honest. So I wanted to pull out a quick quote from the paper, which kind of sets a perspective on the matter, which states, "It would be if the same amount of plastic rubbish had been allowed to accumulate in one of the world's greatest museums or art galleries." SIF's Board of Trustees were committed to finding a solution, and as a result, they decided to conduct a 5-week intensive cleanup expedition, and that was in early 2019 by a team of Seychelles volunteers and Oxford University students. So this is a little bit more into the Acup Project. The project aimed to tackle plastic pollution through 3 key areas, which was research, education, and action. The project had the twin aims of, firstly, documenting the extent and nature of the problem, and secondly, removing as much accumulated plastic litter from the largest of the 4 islands that comprise the atoll. There has been a lot of plastic pollution research worldwide, and even in Seychelles by ICS and Cuisine Island. So our study focuses on the plastic problem on islands, but more of a management perspective. Almost a year after the cleanup, the Acup research paper was submitted to peer review, and it successfully got published in September 2020. And under the research, we wanted to quantify how much litter was accumulated on Aldabra, where the litter was coming from, the cost to remove the litter, and the effort required to do so. So the key purpose of the research paper is to quantify the resources required for removal efforts and to estimate the financial burden on a small island state in order to adapt and plan properly. So if we look a little bit into the methodology, we sorted and weighed the collected debris into 6 categories, which included consumer items, packaging, fishing-related items, footwear, fragments, and other materials. Each session was timed, and an estimate was made on the average cleanup rate per person per hour. We also recorded all costs of the cleanup to calculate the cost per ton to calculate of removal and manage to project the cost for a full island cleanup if it were to happen in the future. The amount of accumulated litter was estimated by conducting transect surveys in each coastal habitat, in which the questions on the screen you can see assisted to do so at these different points. Additionally, we recorded origins of PET bottles from intact labels that we found on them, and boat codes on fish aggregating devices. And lastly, we are continuing to collect accumulation rate data and investigate the amount and types of attached biota to the litter. So the results for the collected waste shows that the total 26.4 tons were collected and 25.7 tons were removed from the island. So that remaining 0.7 tons had to be left on Aldabra due to unsafe sea conditions, which made the removal from one of the smaller collection points quite impossible. So on that note, it does highlight the danger and the difficulties of this type of cleanup in this area. The largest component by weight of the total debris collected is fishing related items that included buoys, nets, fads, and ropes, which came up to 15.8 tons of the 26.4 tons of the total debris, and that makes 60% of that. Plastic shoes, mostly flip-flops, came up as a runner-up for the largest component by weight, and that was 6 tons or 24% of the total collected debris. And just to note, a whopping 60,000 individual flip-flops were collected from this. So looking into the composition of the litter that was remaining on Aldabra, there was a total of 513 tons, which was estimated to remain on Aldabra. Our estimate is the highest recorded for any one island worldwide. A mean accumulation rate was estimated at 6.5 tons annually. So if we have a look at the pie chart on the left, from the evaluation by weight, the composition of the debris on Aldabra is dominated by the litter from the regional fishing industry, which was 83%. So that's the blue. And following that was the flip-flops from further afield, which was 7%. And that was the pink. So if we have a look at the origin of the debris, 470 bottles were sampled, with 45 having intact labels where the manufacturing country was identified. So the majority of the bottles, which were 21 or 4%, were from China. Others were from Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, India, Singapore, and South Africa. So also 28% of the fishing floats had made in Taiwan inscribed on them. Moreover, 7 FADs had clearly decipherable identification codes, which all came from tuna purse seine vessels, which were registered to fishing in the Seychelles EEZ. So after learning all of this, we hope that our research can inform not only individual consumption, but also the national and international policies, as well as encourage better corporate responsibility and action. So the results allowed us to estimate the amount of debris and the cost of removal. On the right, we can see that we have estimated the cost of to be $224,537 to remove the whole 25 tons from the atoll. So this is about $10,000 per day of cleanup operations, or $8,900 per ton of litter. We extrapolated about $1.97 million to $7.28 million as the cost to remove the remaining litter from the largest island of Aldabra. We managed to calculate a mean collection rate of 28 kg per person per hour. That means that it required 35.7 person hours to remove just 1 ton of litter. On the left, we see that the estimated total project cost is considered, the estimated total project cost is considered conservative because the cost does not include all in-kind contributions from SIF or even the Seychelles People's Defense Forces who were involved. So combining all the information on the amount and types of litter with the effort required for the removal, the calculated cost of the removal of the total 513 tons is approximately $4.68 million. It is estimated that a team of 12 people would take about 18,000 person hours of labor, or 191 days, to collect all the plastic litter. It took 4 days to move 26 tons from shore to ship, which allows us to estimate about 82 days to remove the 513 tons remaining from the shore and to the ship. I think it is important to keep in mind that the estimation of these results and the remaining plastic debris on Aldabra is still a conservative amount. So in summary, the industrial fisheries operating in the region are responsible for large-scale pollution on Aldabra, and the impacts of which are not yet fully known. We have recorded marine life affected and killed, as well as terrestrial life ingesting plastic. Research shows even coral is more likely to develop diseases in proximity to the plastic. There are huge ecological costs to this and potentially to our coral reef ecosystems, which are already under threat. But the financial costs of managing this are also very huge. So the question is, who should pick up the bill? So in conclusion, this level of accumulation is truly not acceptable on one of the world's otherwise most pristine and well-protected islands. Therefore, cleanup efforts are vital for management action for these islands. Cleanup events should be integrated within policies directed at turning off the tap. Investment is needed to set up facilities to support a circular economy, reduce harmful landfill alternatives, and create revenue through jobs and products in this new industry. More research is definitely needed to understand the full impacts of this issue, but costs cannot and should not fall under already resource-stretched conservation organizations like SIF, who are already dealing with other threats also caused from outside its region. It is recommended that international funding is made available for these cleanup efforts, considering the transboundary nature of both the marine plastic problem and the ecosystem services provided by biodiversity-rich islands. Apart from the fishing industry, it is less likely that the main source of litter is Seychelles. I mean, it's too many to originate from just a population of 98,000 people. So I believe accountability is needed. This unprecedented coverage shows that Aldabra has the ability to capture interest and hearts of millions. We need to use this as a global icon for showcasing nature and the threats it now faces. So our SIF Board of Trustees have committed to another cleanup event in the future. However, we need to keep in mind that SIF is a self-funded organization, heavily dependent on tourism income. And so especially now with the implications of COVID-19, it has been really affected. And where SIF is already having so many more priorities on their radar. So just to end with a take-home message, our research findings have been published, but that should not be the end of this story. We look to government now to use the evidence we have generated to act. The ecological cost of the fishing industry should be factored into the cost per ton of tuna, although we feel there is no price high enough that will compensate for the destruction of our marine ecosystems. Thank you very much for listening. I also would like to say that if you want to read the paper or watch our documentary, Island Under Siege, I will put both the links in the chat box below. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that, Emeline. I really appreciate how you able to bring in all these different points of such a large project. And I know we already have some questions, and I just want to let our attendees know we're running a little bit over time, but I hope you can just make time for like 3-4 minutes where we'll just get a chance to get in some of these questions. And I think we already have 2, so I'll take these 2, and maybe people can also send in emails, or we can even have a chat, but we'll try and get to these 2 first. So the first question is, how has the government made a statement on helping to tackle this problem, and will they address the issue, the local industrial fishing sector?
So from my knowledge, I do believe that the government has been very supportive in our efforts and in SIF's goals to doing more with this cleanup. So from what I know as well, I do believe that even some things have been taken to international conferences and bodies to further make more of an impact for international collaboration. So in that aspect, I really do feel that we have been getting the support for this. In terms of the local industrial fishing sector, from my knowledge, I have not seen any strong points put forward yet. But of course, I think these outreach presentations and talking about it and the research papers, I believe that a lot will be done with the government and as well international partners, as I truly do believe the results show that it is making a huge difference, and there is a lot to fight for.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that goes into it. And I think another question has just come up from Jean-Pierre. Oh, wait, sorry. It just skipped, sorry. From Jessica. Are the fishing vessels required to have onboard observers to monitor illegal dumping?
Okay, so from my knowledge, from the tuna vessels and the other fishing vessels in Seychelles, there are, as usual, there are always these procedures that need to be happening. But as far as I can say of whether it's being followed up, I'm not exactly sure. This is not really my department onto having the numbers of this and to seeing whether this is actually going through with things. But in theory, yes, they should be having some sort of monitoring system.
Cool. Great. That's excellent. And I'm gonna give just to say, Adam says really good talk. Emeline, an excellent rigorous piece of work, very interesting, and I hope it can drive change and response. And I'm just gonna give you the last question to Samantha. So having followed your efforts last year for the Aldabra Clean Up, this question was useful in knowing your findings. How can SF collaborate with other SIDS to implement similar projects? And we'll end on that question.
So that's a really great question. I think the whole point of screaming all these results and pushing it out there is to find other similar small island developing states, as well as islands, especially, who are going through the same problems of marine plastic litter. And I do believe that in the future, for example, our research is only the beginning. It's the first baby step. So it's kind of like a shot in the dark of future cleanup events and the future of what we can do to tackle this situation. So I think other islands as well who haven't taken that step or are about to take that step or willing to take that step, they can use this research and results as an example or as a platform to build themselves to making this expedition or to be making this event happen. Yeah, and I think any other project that's going on, I feel like all the results should be discussed and will be discussed. And even in terms of setting out a proper plan for how they can go about this, I think that's important because there's so much pre-planning to do something like this, especially islands which are so remote and such ecosystems that are sensitive as well. So I think we have to be very careful about it. And if we've already started this, I feel like we've got a lot to learn from each other and a lot together. I feel like together, small island developing states will build their voice together, but not standing alone, to make this actually become more effective for the sustainability of our small island developing states.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Emeline, for sharing on this presentation, answering these questions. Really appreciated. And yeah, I mean, this brings us to the end of our second day of the Seychelles Ocean Science Symposium. So I'd like to thank all our presenters. And in the case of Emeline, I know you still have some more questions. So maybe if you could drop your email address in the chat. And then if people have these questions, they can definitely pass it on to you and you can get back to them. But yeah, I would like to thank all our presenters today. I'd also like to thank all our behind the scenes people, Sheena, I know Sophie in other instances, Paris. So I'm just, yeah, big shout out to the whole team in front of you as well as behind the screens tonight. And yeah, thank you so much for our audience. Your questions have been very much appreciated, your attention very much appreciated. And thank you again for making the time for this. There will be a next session tomorrow at 1 p.m. Seychelles time or 11 a.m. GMT. And we invite you to carry on to the next couple of days, and you'll be using the same link that you've been using throughout these sessions. So with that, thank you so much for this session. And I wish you guys all a good day, good evening, or good night.